County 911.
Ma'am, I killed my boyfriend in self-defense.
What did you kill him with?
A gun, a loaded gun in the house.
Tell me where the gun is right now.
The gun is in the house. I laid it on the bookshelf.
Where are you?
He had put his arm across the table, and there's a lamp. I don't know if anyone will ever want to marry me if they know that I killed a boyfriend in self-defense. Not funny, but...
For Shayna, this relationship was everything. And having Ryan on her arm sure looked good. Telling people that she was dating this 29-year-old attorney who had his own firm in Cincinnati sure sounded good.
And I grabbed the gun and I shot him.
Ryan Poston was 29. He was an attorney. He lived in a condominium in Highland Heights, Kentucky. On October 12, 2012, a 911 call came from that home. The woman who made the call said she had shot Ryan. The call became the first public crack in a life that, until that evening, had looked normal on the surface.
County 911.
Ma'am, I killed my boyfriend in self-defense.
What did you kill him with?
A gun, a loaded gun in the house.
Tell me where the gun is right now.
The gun is in the house. I laid it on the bookshelf.
Where are you?
I'm standing about 10 feet from his dead body.
Okay, are you sure that he is dead?
He's dead, ma'am. He's completely dead.
Okay. And how long ago did you shoot him?
I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, not even that long. Like
10 or 15 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your name?
My name is Shayna Michelle Huber.
The officers are going to want me to stay on the line with you, so when they get there, they're going to want to know where that gun is, and we want you to get out safely too, okay?
Okay, are they going to arrest me?
Ma'am, I don't know what they'll do. We're going to send them out. I'm going to stay on the line with you, okay?
I mean, I'm not a murderer, ma'am. I just killed him.
What happened exactly? What happened?
He beat me and tried to carry me out of the house, and I came back in to get my things, and he was right in front of me, and he reached down and grabbed the gun, and I grabbed it out of his hand and pulled the trigger.
Okay. All right. Do you need an ambulance? Have you been injured?
I'm not injured, ma'am. I was thrown into the side of the couch.
All right. What's his name?
Ryan Carter Poston. He's an attorney in Cincinnati.
Okay. Have you had a history of domestic violence with him?
Yes.
Okay. And is this your gun?
No, this is his gun. He keeps loaded guns in the house.
So he slammed you into the couch, but you don't have any injuries?
I don't have any injuries. I was just very frightened. He's a lot bigger than me. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. I'm 5'8", 120. And he picked me up, and I said, let me get my things at least if we're going to break up. And he threw me across the room, and I was very startled. I was laying on the floor.
Okay. All right.
And I killed him.
Ma'am, you're sure he's not breathing at all?
Because I have to go touch him.
No, that's okay. They actually have someone that's outside almost right now, but I'm going to stay on the line with you, okay?
Ma'am, and then because he was twitching and I knew he was going to die anyway, and he was making funny noises, I shot him a couple more times just to kill him because I knew he would have been...
I'm sorry, you said you shot him a couple more times after that?
Yeah,
How many times did you shoot him total?
I don't know.
Okay, because he was twitching and you knew he was going to die, so you shot him again?
Enough to make sure he was dead because he was twitching so bad and I didn't want to lay there and twitch.
So you shot him instead of calling 911?
Yeah, I did because I knew he was going to die anyway.
Every case you see here is carefully investigated, reconstructed, and told without distractions. Subscribing gives you early access to new cases, deeper breakdowns, and stories that demand attention. This isn't entertainment. This is understanding what really happened. Before the violence, there was a life of small certainties. Ryan had routines. He worked. He had friends. He dated. He was ambitious in a way that looked harmless, the kind of ambition that shows up as extra hours at the office and careful plans for the future. People who knew him said he seemed, in public, like any other promising young professional. The condominium where he kept his briefcase and his suits was not a stage for drama. It was a place that fit the life he had built. In hindsight, those tiny, ordinary details would later matter. They framed how sudden the collapse into death really was. The predator, if predator is the word, arrived in plain clothes. She was young. She was known to him. Shayna Hubers was an on-again, off-again girlfriend. Their relationship had frayed and mended in the months before October 12th. Texts and calls threaded through their days, small fights, reconciliations, a pattern of closeness and cooling. She had shown up in his life repeatedly. She had made herself part of the background. That background is how trust forms. It was how she came to be in his home the night he died. This is how the setup looked. Small details, then a sudden natural inversion. Nothing seemed off. Nothing suggested danger. At the time, no one realized how those details would be read under the cold lights of an interrogation room.
He had put his arm across the table, and there's a lamp, and he had put his arm across the table and had it in my face and was screaming at me at the top of his lungs after he had thrown me around the room, and was saying emotionally to me, "You're a f***ing hillbilly. I f***ing hate you. I hate everything about you for what you are, and my family hates you." And he was screaming it, and he had his hand on the table, and he wasn't completely standing up. He was like this. He was sitting, he was enough that when I shot him, he went like this. Literally. That's when I knew he was dead. Or close to it, and twitching. And I let him, I still, even though it hurt, I still, enough of me, loved him. That I couldn't stand to watch him twitch. I knew he was going to die, or have a completely deformed face. He's very vain. One of our last conversations we had that was good was that he wants my best friend who's a dentist to do his veneers and wants to get a nose job. Just that kind of person. And I shot him right here. I gave him his nose job. He wanted. I broke it. And you know, I wasn't doing anything that was mean. I was like begging him to stay in the relationship and be with me because I knew that we once really loved each other. You know, Ryan had told me that he loved me and wanted to be with me. And I guess somewhere along the way, that grew to hate. He was screaming how much he hated me. I don't know if anyone will ever want to marry me if they know that I killed a boyfriend and self-defense. It's not funny, but stuff he was saying to me was so abusive while he was throwing me around the room. I'll never forget him. I think in the midst of that, my love turned to hate. I remember screaming, reaching up to grab the shirt. "You, how dare you mock my family? How dare you talk like speak really of my mother and my family?"
The disappearance, the moment when the ordinary tilts into crisis, in this case did not linger outside a supermarket. It happened inside a home. It moved from dinner plans and routine texts to a 911 call and a pair of police cars. The timeline compresses. Minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Hubers called 911 and told the dispatcher she had shot Ryan Poston. She remained at the scene. The scene, when officers arrived, was a study in contradiction. A young man struck down inside the home he owned, and a woman who alternated between crying and making strange, flippant remarks. The raw, piercing fact of the night was brutal in its simplicity. Ryan had been shot multiple times. The number is a hard piece of the story. He was shot 6 times. That detail would later be a weight in the courtroom. The search that followed was less a citywide manhunt than an investigation inside a home and inside the narrative of 2 people who had been entangled. Police treated the scene as a homicide. Friends and family were called. The first hours are always a blur for loved ones. They gather, they ask where, they ask why, they replay the last messages. They try to stitch together a timeline using minutes, not days. The urgency is intimate. It is a neighbor checking in, a mother calling and not getting the answer she needs, a friend replaying the last voicemail. Ryan's family arrived and faced the unthinkable. They learned that the man they loved had been shot in his own living room. The search for answers had a face, the face of a young woman who had called for help and stayed. The police collected evidence. They took statements. They watched for inconsistencies. The house, minutes before a private life ended, became a sealed object of proof and contradiction. The discovery was clinical and personal at once. Ryan was dead. The family's grief was immediate and savage. In public, they moved through legal steps, a funeral, a burial, and in private, they reassembled memory. At the funeral, a simple moment captured the scale of their loss. Ryan's mother stood before friends and colleagues and simply asked, in a voice that cracked and then steadied, for people not to forget him. She described his laugh, his way of noticing little things, the plans he had, the future he should have had. The image of his sister placing a folded program into the coffin with trembling hands is the kind of scene that anchors a story in sorrow. It is the emotional core. This is where the audience understands what was taken and what cannot be returned. That moment, small and human, is the one the family carries forever. The manhunt and arrest in this case were unusual because there was no chases through dark streets. The arrest was the result of the 911 call and the immediate presence at the scene. Hubbers was taken into custody after making statements to the police and after what officers described as behavior that swung between confession and performance. In the hours after the shooting, footage and transcripts of her statements and later of her interrogation became central pieces of the public story. Investigators pointed to inconsistencies. They pointed to the extreme measure of 6 shots. They pointed to texts and other messages that had been exchanged. The police worked to build a case that would reach beyond the moment and into motive. The past of the accused was not one of long criminal records that colored the investigation. Instead, it was a past of volatility in a relationship, arguments, reconciliations, and an obsession that prosecutors would later highlight in court. The question that haunted many was not only why in the emotional sense, but how. How did the dynamics of a young relationship find their way into a killing? How did warning signs, if they existed, go unnoticed or unaddressed? In hindsight, the pattern of frequent, intense contact and the accounts of people who had seen them argue became the small, threaded evidence that prosecution wove into motive. The defense, for its part, argued self-defense and sought to paint a larger picture of abuse. The 2 narratives would collide in a courtroom. The trial was a slow unspooling. Testimony alternated between clinical accounts of forensic detail and raw accounts of relationships and intimacy. The prosecution argued passion and obsession, a relationship that had become dangerous when Ryan tried to distance himself. The defense argued fear and an instinct to survive. A key piece of evidence that would be repeated at trial was the 911 recording and Huber's own words at the scene and during interviews, moments that prosecutors said showed awareness and calculation beyond immediate fear. The jury considered the physical evidence, the number and placement of the shots, the trajectory details, the lack of certain defensive wounds, and the forensic reconstruction that attempted to map a moment into a narrative of intent. After deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty in April 2015. The jury recommended a 40-year sentence. Even verdicts, however, can be imperfect instruments of justice. A procedural failure emerged after the first trial. One juror had a concealed felony conviction, a fact that under Kentucky law should have disqualified that person from serving. The discovery meant the conviction was overturned on appeal. The system had a flaw that required correction. For the family, the legal win was hollowed by the return of uncertainty. For the accused, it meant a new chance at the defense. The reversal was not about guilt or innocence in the moral sense. It was about the integrity of the rules intended to make trials fair. It was a system failure of a kind that raised questions about how well court processes screen and protect the fairness of a jury. That missed detail, a juror's undisclosed past, led to a retrial. The second trial revisited the same raw facts under fresh eyes. Witnesses returned to testify. New strategies were deployed in the courtroom. Hubers took the stand in the retrial and described the relationship in lurid and intimate detail. The jurors again found her guilty. The second conviction carried a life sentence with the possibility of parole. Sentencing calculations later fixed an earliest parole eligibility date in the 2030s. For the family, the verdict in the retrial returned a degree of closure. For the community, it reopened debate about how relationships become lethal and how the law parses motive from moment. In the aftermath, families pick up what they can. They ask questions the justice system does not always answer. They look for safety lessons. Ryan's death became a cautionary tale in many conversations about how obsession can look like affection, about how small details in text messages and visits can form a dangerous pattern, and about how the legal system must be both vigorous and exacting. The family's emotional moment at the funeral, that plea to remember who he was, remains the human anchor. The key piece of evidence, the 911 call, and the forensic detail of 6 shots anchored the legal story. The system failure, a juror's undisclosed felony that forced a retrial, reminded everyone that justice is procedural as much as it is moral. These are the pieces that together form the meaning of the case. The verdict did not make the hurt disappear. It did not bring Ryan back. It returned, instead, a judgment written by law and jury. It offered a form of accountability and a reminder that ordinary lives can break suddenly and without warning. The final reflection is small and stern. Watch the patterns. Listen to the pleas that are not loud. Watch how closeness sometimes hides pressure, and remember the person at the center. Ryan was more than a headline. He was a son, a brother, a friend. The family asked the world, quietly and fiercely, to hold him that way. In the end, their wish is the one thing that outlasts the court dockets and the news cycles. Remember him for who he was, not only for how he died.
Every case you see here is carefully investigated, reconstructed, and told without distractions. Subscribing gives you early access to new cases, deeper breakdowns, and stories that demand attention. This isn't entertainment. This is understanding what really happened.